Good morning. Today I'm going to do the next reading in this series of readings of the DoughForge library. You can see in the picture there, that is the DoughForge EPUB library, DoughForge powered by Wankers. And the book I have here is The Wandering Anchor, which you can see there underneath the fair index. The unfair index book, rather. There's Puss in Our Cat and Theodolite, approved, DoughForge approved, reproducible self-pub kit. Now it's in this full scap size. I think it would be quite a weighty book. Alongside it in the picture there, you can see here the case of the elusive Wanker Pimpernel. Father Brown investigation. Now, both of these fictional books are ancillary to the Conquest of DoughForge, which I did a reading of the foreword by David Malone to that book yesterday, and introduced the fair index. And taken as a piece, they are looking at the fair index, which is academic index based on why housing access is becoming more exclusionary, and that's all been analysed, and I've gone into that in some depth. But as the Wandering Anchor, one thing about the Wandering Anchor, the case of the elusive Wanker Pimpernel and the DoughForge library all share a common of sorts introduction, and so I'm just going to just dip in here and just read a few bits of these things until I get fed up reading them, and then upload this, and then that's this reading done. So The Wandering Anchor, Incomplete Survey. You can download the PDF for $4.99 from the DoughForge.org website, or you can purchase this from Barnes and Noble. All the links are in description, etc. And the paperback, I mean, this is good beach reading in my opinion, and some of the other readings coming up also qualify as that. So yeah, I'm very pleased with it. I quite like this full scap. I think it reminds me of when I was an O-level student, and the Let's Revise study aids. I don't know if anybody remembers those. So anyway, The Wandering Anchor, and it starts off with the life and opinions of Hand Shandy, gentleman and wanker. So there's all the contents. So the life and opinions of Hand Shandy, gentleman and wanker. One chapter in 6 parts, The Wandering Anchor cut. So the Wandering Anchor cut means that this digression is at the front of the 3 books I said before, and they're all slightly different. And what that's kind of getting at is how different perspectives on the same subject cause people to disagree about things, where they actually are talking about different things, even though it's the same object, which, you know, it's like the elephant of Hindustan or something like that. So anyway, The Wandering Anchor priming chapter. One chapter in 6 parts, The Wandering Anchor cut being a priming chapter for the Conquest of DoughForge, which also appears at the front of The Wandering Anchor and the case of the elusive Wanker Pimpernel. Father Brown investigates in different orders and with different epigraphs, the material of which is nonetheless the same in all 3 books, and which the attentive reader is invited to read in all 3, for reasons that will become apparent by the end of part 6. An apology from the author before the apology from the narrator, who is also the author but not quite. This is a long chapter. It is longer than a chapter has any business being. It has 6 parts. 3 of them are scenes: a kitchen in Yarn Up, a Volvo on a winter road, a vicarage kitchen in a village on the western edge of England. The other 3 are arguments spoken by the author, more or less directly to the reader, in a register that I can only describe as admitting it. I had the option of making this a short chapter. I considered it. I rejected it. Short chapters work for books that have already been primed. This book is priming you for 16 other books, and a detective novel, and an autobiography, and a fair index, and a bracket that opened in 2010 and has not yet closed. Short would have been a lie. Tristram Shandy could not be born because the book kept interrupting itself to explain how it was made. This book has the same condition. We consider it a feature. Please keep reading. The jokes land before the arguments, and the arguments land before you notice them landing, and the landing is the point. Epigraph, being 3 quotations from 3 books, 2 of which you are not currently holding. From The Wandering Anchor, Chapter 1, The Raft. The theodolite is not the instrument. The man with the theodolite is the instrument. The theodolite is the thing in his hands. The Wild T2 on the Isle of Dogs in 1989 was a machine. The surveyor holding it at 4 in the afternoon in the November fog was the thing that mattered. The machine could not survey a site it was standing on. The man could. The man could also be wrong. That is what made him useful. From Pimpernel, Father Brown investigates Chapter 1, The Package in the Pigeonhole. Mrs. Hennessy, please tell the sexton I shall not be taking evensong tonight. I'm reading a manuscript. It appears to have been written about a problem I recognise, by a man I have never met in a country I have never visited. The manuscript contains a cat. I must find out whether the cat is in any way responsible. From The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman by Lawrence Sterne, 1759. Digressions incontestably are the sunshine. They are the life, the soul of reading. Take them out of this book, for instance, you might as well take the book along with them. 1 chapter, 3 books, 3 epigraphs, each pair of which is quoting into the one you are holding now. If one of those quotations catches your ear, follow it. You will find more than you expect, and less than you thought, and exactly the amount that was there when you started looking. That is how the hunt works. The hunt is explained in part 5. Part 1, Hand Shandy in the kitchen at Yarnup. The DoughForge cut. Scene 1 being a Saturday evening in southern Sweden in which an ITV2 variety show plays in the other room while a man writes a chapter at the kitchen table and a cat does not comment. The television is in the other room. Roger is at the kitchen table. Pussin is on the chair opposite in a usual Saturday evening position, paws tucked under, eyes half closed, the grey and white fur of a cat who has been fed twice and who is saving the 3rd meal for the point in the evening at which a certain kind of tide takes the household. The laptop is open to Chapter 9. A cup of tea that has been cold for 42 minutes sits next to the trackpad. The kitchen window looks out into a Swedish garden in which the April light is doing the thing April light does in this latitude, which is to refuse to leave at a decent hour. From the other room, through the doorway, the television is tuned to ITV2. This is not a channel Roger would normally choose. The television has never been tuned to ITV2 in Roger's custody of it. The television is a second-hand Philips, which was in the house when Roger and Johanna brought it in 2011, on the strength of an estate sale advertisement in the Engelholm newspaper, at a moment in the family's financial history at which second-hand furniture was an aspiration rather than a purchase decision. The television works. The television receives channels it should not, in theory, be able to receive. The television has, this evening, decided to receive ITV2. Roger has not investigated how. He has been at Chapter 9 for 6 hours. He is not going to interrupt himself to interrogate a piece of consumer electronics. The sound is low. Through the doorway, he catches, between sentences of Chapter 9, a voice he recognises. It is the kind of voice that has been on British television since 1979 and will be on British television until the sun burns out. The voice of a man who was born to announce other people. Good evening and welcome to Hand Shandy, live from the Globe tonight. Pete and Dud discuss the Wankel rotary engine. Corrupted Monica brings her stand-up set from the Backyard Comedy Club. Candida Tobin, the woman who taught 10,000 children to compose music in 15 minutes, returns in a documentary short. Ted Nelson joins a panel with the ghost of Alfred Tarski, and the entire cast is joined in the closing segment by the Parliament of LLMs, who would like a word with the author. Your host, as ever, is hand shandy, gentleman, and wanker. Please welcome him to the stage. Roger stops typing. He looks at the doorway, then at Pussum, then back at the laptop. He types the word unsurprised into chapter 9, considers it, deletes it, retypes it, decides that unsurprised is exactly right and leaves it in. He does not look back at the doorway. In the other room, the studio audience applaud. A studio audience applauding, Roger has come to understand, is the sound of people who have been told when to applaud. It is the sound of the ceteris paribus clause in action. Under normal conditions, applause is a spontaneous signal. Under studio conditions, it is a cued response. You cannot tell from the sound of applause whether the show was any good. You can only tell whether warm-up comedian knew their job. The same is true of affirmation in late-stage capitalism. The same is true of likes on a tweet. The same is true of the automated verification tests that the continuous integration pipeline runs on the commit. Roger made at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The test passes if the conditions under which the test was defined are the conditions under which the test is run. Change the conditions and the test is either meaningless or false, and you cannot tell which without doing the work. The mutatis mutandis clause is where the real work lives. Roger has been trying for 4 years to make his own work survive the mutatis mutandis clause. This is the work this chapter is a priming device for. The reader does not yet know this. The reader can hear the applause through the doorway and can probably guess that there is a joke coming. 2 men walk on stage. Roger cannot see them. He can hear them. He knows the cadence. The television segment 1. Pete and Dud on the wankle. Pete? Ever had a wankle? Can't say I have, Dud, no. Dud, rotary engine goes round and round, very efficient in theory. In practice, it leaks. Pete, like most things. Once it starts leaking, you can't just patch the leak. The whole motion is compromised. The seal goes and then the whole thing, round and getting nowhere. You're talking about something else, aren't you, Dud? I'm talking about the wanker protocol, Pete. Of course you are. Because the wanker is the opposite of the wankle. The wankle goes round and leaks. The wanker you set once, you verify, and everything else is built on top. No drift, no leak, no going round. And if the wanker drags, then nothing ships. That's quite profound, Dud. I thought so, Pete. I thought so. The studio audience laughs. In a way, studio audiences laugh. A warm, fully committed laugh that has been warmed up to. And in the kitchen, Roger exhales through the nose, which is the closest thing to a laugh a Welsh surveyor allows himself when he is working against a Sunday morning deadline. He types 3 more sentences of chapter 9. He reaches for the cold tea. He does not drink it. He gets up, walks to the counter, and refills the kettle, because the kettle being used is a sign of forward motion, even if the forward motion is chiefly horizontal. The kettle clicks. Anyway, so that, as it declares, is a long chapter, and it introduces parallel themes using different setups, as it were. And then the book proper starts here at chapter 5.5. So what I'm going to do is just read the end of the digression, which is this. As I was saying before I interrupted myself, 22nd of March 2026, commit D481806. This is how the book starts. The 6 parts you've just read are a digression before commencement. They are the Tristram Shandy move applied to the front matter, the book interrupting itself to explain how it was made. Before it has been made, everything that follows, the poetry cycle, the novel, the captain's logs, the synthesis, the teaching lessons, the fair index paper, the appendices, the bibliography, the index, the DoughForge key, was written before the digression. The digression was written after. The digression was prepended. The book, as it stands, was not touched. This is important. The 6 parts are a priming chapter. The book is the book. The primer does not replace the paint. The paint was already on the wall on the 22nd of March 2026, when the first version of this chapter, the shorter, rougher pre-digression version, was committed to the repository at #D481806 with the message, feet hand shandy as opening frame, narrator leads the whole construction. That commit still stands. The book still stands. The 6 parts stand in front of both. The wereman stands in front of his own front door and describes the house to someone who has not yet been invited in. You have now been invited in. The same 6 parts in different order stand at the front door of the Wandering Anchor and at the front of Pimpernel Father Brown Investigates. In each book, the 6 parts are a digression before commencement. In each book, the book that follows them is the book that was already there. 3 front doors, 3 houses, 1 key. The key is at the back. The book begins on the other side of this page. Never had a wankle. Journal of. Chapter 5.5. The television in the Compass Rose. March 10th. The Compass Rose. 3rd pint. Hannah is annotating the beer mat. The Compass Rose was the kind of pub that had survived the 21st century by pretending it had not noticed it. Oak beams, flagstone floor, a fireplace that worked but was not lit because the landlord had decided at some point in the previous decade that an unlit fireplace was a design statement rather than a failure of hospitality. The beer was local, the crisps were not, and the television, a flat screen, mounted above the bar at an angle that suggested it had been installed by someone who owned a drill but not a spirit level, was playing something that nobody was watching. Roger was watching. He was watching the way a surveyor watches, not the content, not the plot, not the performance, but the geometry, the angle of the screen, the distance from the nearest stool, the relationship between the image and the room, which was the relationship between what was being shown and who was being shown it, which was, in his experience, always the most important measurement, and the one nobody took. On the screen, Amanda Donohoe was wearing a snake headdress. He knew the film, The Lair of the White Worm, Ken Russell, 1988. He'd seen it on late-night television in his 20s in a flat in Docklands that smelled of plaster dust and ambition, and he had thought it was ridiculous. He'd been 23, and he had been wrong about many things, but he had been particularly wrong about that. You're looking at the television, Hannah said. She did not look up from the beer mat. The beer mat was from a brewery in Brecon, and she was writing on its reverse in green ink. The green that meant not ready to say out loud yet, and the writing was small enough that Roger could not read it from across the table, which he suspected was intentional. I'm looking at The Serpent, he said. It's a Ken Russell film, yes, but it's also the BIS. She looked up. Her glasses had slid to the end of her nose, which meant she had been reading at close range for more than 20 minutes, which meant the beer mat had become something other than a beer mat. Behind the lenses, her eyes held the particular expression she wore when someone else had arrived at a connection she had been circling for weeks. Explain, she said. Russell made it in 1988, the same year the Basel Committee published the first capital adequacy framework, Basel I, the framework that determined how much capital every bank in every signatory country would be required to hold against its lending, which determined how much credit could be created, which determined how much money would flow into the housing market, which determined, I know what it determined. What I don't know is why you're connecting it to Amanda Donohoe in a red headdress. Roger picked up his pipe. The beer was dark and local, and it tasted of hops and the particular mineral quality of Herefordshire water, which is to say it tasted of the ground, which is to say it tasted of the thing that BIS had financialized without anyone noticing. Because Russell understood something. The horror played straight will not be believed. You cannot tell a room full of homeowners that their mortgages are denominated in a currency whose quantity is determined by a committee in Basel that they have never heard of, and expect them to feel anything other than irritation at being told. So Russell put The Serpent in a sequined bodysuit. He made it camp. He made it watchable. He gave it Amanda Donohoe's cheekbones and a sense of humour and a willingness to be absurd, because the absurdity is the anaesthesia that allows you to look at the thing without flinching. Hannah put down the green pen. She picked it up again. She put it down. The green pen on the beer mat made a small sound, the sound of a decision not yet taken, a verdict deferred, an annotation hovering between the margin and the main text. The worm is under the estate, she said. The worm is under every estate, every housing estate, every landed estate, every estate agent's window display. The worm has been there since 1930, when the BIS was founded to manage German war reparations. And it was there through the war when the transfers continued. And it was there through Bretton Woods when the delegates voted to dissolve it. And it survived the vote. And it's there now, in a round tower on the Rhine, publishing working papers about macroprudential policy, and nobody is watching. Roger gestured at the television. On screen, the snake woman was descending into the underground lair. The resolution was poor, the colours were oversaturated in the way that late 80s film stock was always oversaturated, as though the celluloid itself was trying too hard. A couple at the bar were not watching. A man with a terrier was not watching. The landlord, polishing a glass with the circular motion of a man who has polished 10,000 glasses and no longer requires visual confirmation that the glass is clean, was not watching. Nobody is watching, Roger said. The film is playing, the serpent is on screen, Russell is doing everything short of walking into the pub and pointing at the television with both hands, and nobody is watching. Because the television is above the bar, and the bar is where you go to not watch things. And the things you're not watching are the things that matter most. Hannah reached across the table and took his pint. She took a sip, precise, measured, the way she did everything, and set it back down on the exact ring it had left on the table. That's my beer, he said. I'm annotating it. You can't annotate beer. I can annotate anything. I annotated a railway timetable in 2019. I annotated a terms of service agreement for a cryptocurrency exchange and found 3 clauses that contradicted each other and one that contradicted the laws of thermodynamics. I can certainly annotate a pint of beer in a pub in Herefordshire. She pulled the beer mat towards her and continued writing. The green ink was small and dense and it covered the brewery's logo. A horse rearing, a Latin motto that Roger could not read and suspected the brewery could not either, and it looked from across the table like a very small, very green map of something that had not yet been named. What are you writing? He asked. I'm writing down the connection you just made because you won't. You'll go home and think about it, and then you'll think about something else, and then you'll break bread, and the bread will be good, and the connection will be lost in the proving process. So I'm writing it down. In green? In green because I'm not ready to say it out loud. You just said it out loud. I said I was writing it down. That's not the same thing. Writing is a rehearsal. Speaking is a performance. I'm not yet ready to perform the thesis that the Bank of International Settlements is the lair of the white worm, and that Ken Russell made a film about international monetary architecture disguised as a horror comedy, and that nobody noticed because the disguise was better than the horror. On the television, Amanda Donahue smiled. It was the smile of a woman who knows something that the room does not know, which is the smile of every serpent in every story since Genesis, which is the smile of every institution that operates in plain sight and relies on the audience's conviction that plain sight is the one place where dangerous things do not hide. Roger looked at the screen. Hannah looked at Roger, looking at the screen. The landlord polished the glass. The terrier slept. The fire was not lit. Russell died in 2011, Roger said. He never made another film about the BIS. He didn't need to. He already made it. He put it on the television. He put it on every television, and nobody watched it, and nobody is watching it, and nobody will watch it, because the television is above the bar, and the bar is the place where you go to not look at things that are directly in front of you. Hannah picked up the green pen for the final time. She wrote 3 words on the beer mat and turned it toward him. The words in her small, precise hand in the green ink that meant not ready to say, but saying it anyway, read, "Follow the worm." Roger looked at the beer mat. He looked at the television. He looked at Hannah, who was looking at him with the expression she wore when a reading has been taken and the field book was open, and the only thing left was to record the angle and move to the next station. Green, he said. For now, she said. Give me a week. I'll have it in black. Later, walking home along the lane, the pub behind me, the lane dark, the stars doing what Herefordshire stars do, existing abundantly as though someone had overordered and could not be bothered to return the surplus. I thought about Russell. I thought about the headdress. I thought about the fact that the serpent in every mythology is the thing that lives underground, that predates the house, that is the foundation the house does not examine. Hannah's beer mat is in my coat pocket. 3 words in green ink, follow the worm. I have been for 27 years. I have been following the bearing without knowing where it led. Now I know. It leads to a round tower on the Rhine, and the tower publishes working papers, and the working papers are freely available, and nobody reads them. Nobody watches the television in the Compass Rose. The serpent does not mind. Yeah, so it's a good read, I claim. I think it's nice to have a paperback to read. The paperbacks obviously are substantially more physical dead tree copies, as it were, than the EPUBs. There are 2 readers that go with the DoughForge series, which is the Identity of DoughForge and the DoughForge Identity. At the link doughforge.org, you can get the DoughForge Identity. It's free to download. On the Wikiballot website, various of these books are available on clickable, click books and what have you. The Fair Index academic paper is free to read on the GitHub channel. Again, there are copious links all over the place for someone that wants to read that. And I hope you enjoyed that reading and inspired to. I do like this foolscap format. Yeah, it's very, very tactile. So yeah, so that's The Wandering Anchor, an incomplete survey, part of the Conquest of DoughForge series. And do please buy a copy, download a copy, and click share and do all of that stuff. And people always say, oh, subscribe and all the rest. I couldn't give a damn if you subscribe or not. Effectively, it is what it is. And either you pay attention to what's happening and watch the television in the corner of this thing called reality, or continue to enjoy the bread and circuses and the patently false, which is passed off as reality by those that don't want you to pay attention to the television in the Compass Rose. So thanks very much, and that's a wrap.